Hello and welcome to our Substance live stream. My name is Wes and I'll be your host. Today we have with us Gautam and Eryn, who are artists from SpinVFX Studio. Gautam is a model lead and Eryn is a texture artist lead. They will be talking about the material creation workflows for the TV show The Expanse and the movie Zombieland Double Tap. Gautam and Eryn, welcome to the stream. It's awesome to have you here today.
Hey.
Hey, thanks, Wes.
Yeah,
Good to be
thanks for
here.
having us.
Awesome. Well, we have our main man, Vincent, in the chat. He will be collecting questions for our Q&A session that we'll have at the end of the presentation. So let's just jump right in. Gautam, can you go ahead and start your screen share? And Eryn, just take it away when you're ready.
Sure.
All right. How's everybody? All right, so my name is Eryn Thorsley. I am the texture lead at SpinVFX. Just a little bit about me right now. I've been at Spin for about 4 years now. And before that, I did feature animation, did texture painting for that, as well as some character effects as well. Before that, I was just, an artist getting my undergrad over in Western Canada. I went to the University of Alberta for that. And then followed that up with going to Sheridan in Ontario for CG work. So a little bit about SpinVFX, just real quick. Spin is a creative and technically dedicated VFX studio. We've done a whole ton of projects, many I'm sure you have heard of. We've done things like Game of Thrones, Stranger Things Season 3, John Wick, Extraction, Umbrella Academy, and just a ton of other things. We're really focused on creating excellence with everything that we do. The company's been around for over 30 years and has quite the staff at 250 right now, and 2 different studios, one in Toronto and one in Atlanta. So yeah, we're gonna just show the Spin show reel right now, just for everybody. All right. So yeah, so as you can see, there's a little bit of everything in there. We do everything from action to sci-fi to there's comedy, it's just all across the board. Um, yeah, so we most recently we've wrapped up Umbrella Academy season 2, and even for the last season, we were nominated for an Emmy for outstanding visual effects for that. A couple other things we're working on is Ridley Scott's Raised by Wolves, as well as the show Lovecraft Country on HBO Max right away. So it's pretty exciting. So today we're going to be talking about how we use Substance Painter in our asset workflow at SpinVFX. So I'm going to actually pass it over to Gautam right now. He's our model lead, and he's going to talk about how we use Substance Painter for the show The Expanse. So you can go ahead, Gautam.
Hey, thanks, Eryn. So, hello to all. I'm Gautam. I'm working as a 3D model lead at SpinVFX in Toronto, Canada. I've been working here for almost 2 years now, and prior to joining SpinVFX, I worked as an asset artist at Crew VFX for over 5 years. And since joining SpinVFX, I've worked on several films and shows, including The Umbrella Academy, In the Tall Grass, Zombieland 2, and The Expanse. And I'll be sharing some more detail on that. So, a little brief intro on the show. The Expanse is a sci-fi series on Amazon Prime, currently in its fourth season. And Spin VFX has been with the show since season 1, and we're currently working on season 5. As fans of the show will know, where we spent a lot of time on Mars in season 4, and one of our major CG projects was to develop this intricate transport network for the planet with these transit pods. And we use Substance Painter to help us achieve the whole entire texture and then look up the asset. And it ended up being one of our favorite shots from this season. Right, moving on. Let's start with the concept. So in the slide, I've attached these concept art that was provided by Northern Studios, and this gave me a good overall idea of how the color scheme and texture scale is supposed to be like the Mars rock textures, like how you see it on in here in this image. Also, how the metal and fiber surface looks like in terms of how the metallic or rough looking they are reacting to the light setup in the concept. Also, in terms of where the lights are staged in the concept, it was very helpful to figure out the resolution of the textures to hold up good in the lit up areas. So, after receiving the concept and giving it a good read to assess the various looks and effects in the textures, we break it down further and create a library of reference, and such as these. So, which were the few selected references among others that I used to understand the variety of textures and the complexity that was required for the inside of this dug up Mars tunnel. And we do label our references. That's something we do, and it's a very important thing. So for the purpose that it should be used for, an example for the tunnel, rock, ZBrush, sculpt, if I'm creating, for instance, I'll have a bunch of images to trace the look from, and others are keyed for the color scheme or any other cool looking textures and so on and so forth. And same way we did it for all the metal elements, where we have a lot of creative freedom. Nothing's too accurate in terms of the functioning of the sci-fi looking GAC or agreeable, as what you would call it. Apart from it's supposed to look cool in the end. So to build such set pieces, we look at real life electrical transformers, aka power units, and just like even like looking up online for spare parts of NASA rocket ships, you see really cool looking complex machinery that you can refer and build from. Also looking at some of the great work and tutorials done by Neil Blevin, especially his tute on the primary, secondary, and tertiary forms, extremely helps, and I recommend that thoroughly. And it helps to understand and create really cool looking sci-fi assets. Wanted to share this layout image that really helped understand and plan the scale of the environment, and to like break it down into multiple assets such as this main line over here, and up branch and the junctions in the middle to be built in a way that the model have a manageable number of texture sets and poly count prior to be taken into Substance Painter for textures. All right, here's the 5 main assets among the others that I built to be like modular in nature so that they can be duplicated and placed in a queue in the layout stage to create like multiple transit lines. And with such modularity and modular-based environment projects, the challenge is to make the textures to look unique for every section, like on all the duplicated sections, and also to keep the color and overall look consistent. And before starting texturing the model in Painter, I kept the texture sets same for all, like how you see it over here in the green box over here. Um, So this way, in this particular box, I only have the UVs for the rock surface, and the metal parts have its own assigned texture sets. So reason was to like texture one asset, and after it gets approved, like get a little okayed by the supervisors, we take that same approach to the other sub assets to recreate the approved look, and keeping the scene consistent with the textures. And it was really easy to just like update the geo with the same texture sets in the master file and have the procedural substance material work with the new bakes of the new asset that you've exported in. Um, as I mentioned, once the look of one asset is finalized, I took these materials to texture the other assets and other miscellaneous props, giving the same treatment and look. And having a final look material set also helps transferring over the task to other asset artists or maybe to another studio if need be. So yeah, and then speak. Well, it's also a very friendly way to like get quick reviews by your supervisors, because you have all these materials set up, and if you have like a very tentative look of it, so it really helps to get like quick reviews from the supervisors as you go on finalizing your look. And yeah, same idea with the metal elements. It's always good to have some color variation in metal and not to be looking to in tones of gray, looking monochrome. So this is how the temperature, like this heat discoloration material helps to add some of the subtle breakups on the metal surface. And these materials are all built by using the resources that are available with the software, within the software, or downloaded online, tweaked in Photoshop or Designer, and were like brought into Substance Painter to work for the purpose. Another benefit of having a material library like this is that it makes easy to make a lot of texture variants by just tweaking the seed or the translate offset in your material, in your substance material, for the same asset duplicated in an array to avoid repeating patterns and to make it look more interesting. Yeah, and the reason I had this layout page, this was basically the final layout Maya scene and the screenshots of that. It's just to talk about how important this stage is for like testing out your textures before you finalize them and publish your maps. So having a shot camera can be very helpful to keep a consistent check on your texture progress in regards to not being repetitive or stretched or in blurry in some areas, and that the resolution is good and holds up well in your shot. And this is one of the test renders that I did with lights, with all the modular model duplicated in an array, just to check on the textures, and they held up pretty good for the purpose being an environment background. One of the last and most required things in the workflow is to have the ISO maps available for the look artist to do final finesse, and doing overall color correction and using Katana renderman shaders to drive them through these ISO maps. And I want to credit Marcus Kirk and our asset team for creating this template that enables the user channel on every texture set before creating the project in Substance. And with these channels available, one can create these ISO mask maps, which I'll also show further in Substance shortly, like how we see it in this image over here, where the instance layer has the value set on white, and this is the base layer. This is something out of habit we start with before we start texturing our scene, and we put enable our user channels and we put it on white. And another one is the so-called any dirt instance or other effect layer placed on top of it that would have the value set on black. And one can easily export these ISOs along with the other channels by using the renderer preset, which is set up something like this. So like this, where I have the channels and the grayscale ISOs that are channel set up with the user inputs over here. And since we use ACES as our color space, we have this plugin that converts textures from sRGB to ACES, and it should be enabled prior to exporting the textures, and it works pretty good. And this workflow is pretty much what we followed for almost all the assets. And so we're currently working on season 5 of this show, and viewers at home can catch the whole series, season 4, on Amazon Prime. So let's check out the Expanse season 4 breakdown reel to see some of the other assets that we did.
All right, so it's my turn again. I'm going to be talking about a different project that we worked on. Talking about Zombieland Double Tap. So there's something a little bit different than Expanse. This is a feature film, and it presented different challenges for us as asset artists. So I'm going to kind of get into that and kind of break down how some of the assets were built and just kind of the method that we used in Substance Painter to kind of achieve our goals. So a little thing about Zombieland. The first one was made like 11 years ago, I think. And I remember going to see it in theaters and just thinking it was so funny and such a great film. So I was so excited to work on it now. So here we are, all things kind of come in a big circle. So anyway, this slide here just shows some of the stills from one of our major shots. So what we did was created this entire CG Pisa, Leaning Tower of Pisa Cathedral square. And everything, pretty much everything is CG in this. We've got like a CG ground, CG debris, statues, background buildings, the Pisa, the cathedral, like just absolutely everything. And they're massive assets. They are just crazy, crazy builds. They were so fun, but definitely an endeavor for the studio. We can go down to the next slide here. And I can kind of start talking about how we would tackle something like that. So for something that is so big, you are going to have a lot of artists working on it. And something that I loved about using Substance Painter is that it's just generally so user-friendly, but you can also package different materials up and send them to other artists. So as a team lead, you're kind of trying to always figure out how can I make sure that all of the artists that are working on something are all like on the same page. How are they going to, create something that can kind of all live in the same world, right? Because here we are in, Zombieland 2, we're creating this post-apocalyptic kind of derelict scene, and we need to be able to make it, cohesive across the board. Like every asset has to have the same amount of weathering, and just the same environmental factors have hit it, right? So yeah, so Substance, you're able to share these materials, and that was like such a major thing for this. It's almost as if you can kind of template it out, right? So you can say like, okay, every building has the same white marble. So you guys can, you set that white marble, you get a sign off on that, and then you can pass it on, and the same with like even the like starting dirt, and everything like that as well. Like if you look at these references on the screen here, there's, you can see there's iron staining, there is, certain roof tiling, that sort of thing, as well, that are all like pretty standard, right, for the beginning of everything. So kind of the goal was to kind of get that clean version done first, right? You're going to get, just how Pisa is now, basically, and the thing is too, with something like that, it is such a like an iconic place, right? Everybody has a pretty good idea what like the Leaning Tower of Pisa looks like. So as a VFX artist, you have the challenge of having to really nail that, right? You really have to get that right, and then you can build on it. You can create this world for the film after that, right? So yeah, so then in this slide that we see here, right in the center is the actual on-set piece of the tower that we were given. And so that's kind of what's good about that, is like that's your starting point. That's what clients are saying, like hit that is your your visual goal. And then as an artist, you have to see like what makes up that, right? Like you can't just be like, okay, I'm just gonna hop into it. You kind of have to like, as a texture artist, break it down, right? So you're gonna look and you're gonna like, okay, I see there's, some grout dirt, there is some moss, there is, drips and moisture stains. And then, so you go like pull out different elements of that, right, that you've noticed. So for example, you can see we got moss and dirt, grout and leaks. What's great in Substance Painter is that they have so many smart masks that already have all these, right? So instead of having to, I guess you'd have to like go and find that, a stamp of that on the internet and then paint it, it's already in there, and it's already taking kind of into consideration like kind of like directional flow of things. Like all of your leaks are going to be in the right spot. You bake out all of your auxiliary maps per the model in Substance. So you're already going to get your AO, your curvature, everything's going to be where it is, right? And the thing is in VFX, like all of these models, all of these assets that we're doing are so high poly, like they're well, pretty high poly models. So they already have all those little bevels, all of those, every little detail that you would model in, like is in there, right? So then when you generate these auxiliary maps, like all of that detail's in there. So Substance is great for that. It's so efficient to be able to get that like a really quick turnaround with that realism, right? And that's a big thing about it. And that's why I love using it, is that you can get it in front of your supervisors, in front of clients pretty quickly. And you can change it on the fly. Let's say they're like, okay, that's way too much dirt. You can just dial it back, and that's and it gets you like, I would say a good like 60-70% of the way there, right? And then it just takes the artist's skill to hop in there and hand paint some things. I love in really broken down buildings, you really get the like in between the grout lines, you get some of that. In the vines, you can get like where the vines were, all those like just the little things that really like make it sing. Yeah, and you add that on top, but it's being able to get that original, those quick masks. I mean, like you get that out really quickly, and then you can spend time where you want to like really make something sing. We can go to the next slide now. Okay, cool. So here I'm going to actually send it back to Gautam. He's going to talk about how because he actually did the textures for this building, and so he's going to pop into Substance and kind of show you guys what he did.
Sure, and like how Eryn mentioned about there were like a lot of directions and references were given, and like based on that, this is like the final look created on the right image here, and so the image on the right being on the left, sorry, being the plate was a lock-off shot, which was the later track to using the scan model of the practical build. And I took the shot cam in Painter to texture the wall looking just through the camera. So, which looks something like this. So left image is the screen grab of the Maya viewport, and right is the same camera imported with the GeoFBX. It was really easy to just like decide on the things and variant treatments that were expected of this. Here is where I use the set reference. I straightened and like clean it up in Photoshop, and this was taken into Substance to create a base look. In Substance, it's like plugging into the base color channel of the fill layer, and and it's on the planar projection mode and is instanced across the texture sets, lining it up with the manipulators. So this gave me a very good starting point to start adding the other passes on top of this projection. So let's dive into Substance to see the texture breakdown of this. All right. So I'll just go one by one, enabling my layers and just talk more about like how I progressed with the whole look. So like before I started was like basically was the right decision to texture this wall asset in Substance Painter because I just got like a day and a half, like the timeline which was too tight at that time, and I just like got a very minimum time to finish it up. So I wanted to make sure that I'm only adding details to the areas that would work as per the shot. I mean, the texturing, I would texture this in a way seeing through the camera frame as your canvas and not going too heavy with the details. Also because it was supposed to get Wine's geo to be created in Houdini afterwards, covering the center pillar here. So keeping all of that info in mind, it was doable to finish this in the timeline given. So as many of you know that this is a drop-down box where you can access your camera that you import in with your FBX. And yeah, and this is pretty much what I had enabled all the time as I textured the whole asset. So before we start any of the textures, we make sure that we create a fill layer, which is just a basic fill layer that it's instantiated across all texture sets. And this really helps so like before you start your texture work, you just create this layer and you put it instance it across just so that you can tweak the height mid values afterwards. And it's also used to tweak on your user channels for creating ISOs, is what I explained before in the slides for Expanse. And so, and this is the filler that I was talking about with the height enable and the user 1 and 2 and the zero channel set on white. So moving on for this, the image that I showed you in the slide, basically, this is what I have here. And this is something that I brought in, put it in my base color on my planar projection, and I kind of, by using the manipulator, I kind of just nudged in to sit it just right on top where the crevices are. And this was like a very good starting point to start projecting my asset with all the set reference provided. So once I had, and like added with some use of the clone brushes and projecting more on top of it on layers by using this very projected set reference, I created a final look that looked somewhat like this. Let me disable my wireframe there. Yeah. So basically, I had like a bunch of layers that I had the projection on. So in order to like put it all flat, because I wanted that to act as a canvas, I exported that whole bunch as an EXR and just like brought it back in, and I set it up in a fill layer just to start throwing all the dirt on it. So that's my wall projection. That's my concrete lights. It's basically I'm using the standard material over there and just like masking it wherever I saw there was like some light glitch. just to make everything look even. This is my wet mud dirt, which is just to like add a little discoloration in my base value and to look at. It was just the whole idea was to make it look better than the practical set, like how you saw it in the plate. So yeah, once that was done, also there's the wet mud dirt's got some nice roughness breakups on it, just to add that little moisture treatment to it in the marble. And moving on to the piece of moss, just like added more dirt there, and I decided on to add more dark over there because it was like way on the back side, and I wanted to like add more contrast over there. So let me increase my screen here. All right. And yeah, I had to like, I was making sure like I keep everything very standard and very easy for if in case if it's supposed to get picked up by a different artist, he or she would know what to work and like how to progress with this. So this is like the moss shader that's like created by some channels, channel maps that I got from Substance Source. I think I don't recall it properly, but I think it was texture.com. And it was good enough to work for the purpose, followed by the mask that was the AO dirt, just to like add more contrast and making the crevices and creases more dark. Same explanation for this. It's the dried moss, just color corrected and fixed the levels on this for roughness. And I'm driving this with my moss spot mask. Another good trick is to add a little color variation in your base channel is to have these flattened maps uh, with the right bright and dark value so that it would blend on top of your base color nicely, and it would really cut down on the layers that you could have used in order to create such variation in your base color. So it's 8K and it's pre-made, and it was made in Photoshop just like by putting one effect and treatment on top of another, and just testing it out that how versatile it can be for various looks with the testing it out with the blending mode. I'll put it back on
Hey,
green.
Gautam.
Yep.
Sorry. One question that was coming into the chat was it was requested to take a look at the UVs that you have for this particular piece. So this is using UDEM. I guess you're using several UV tiles. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had like somewhere around 24 UDEMs for this. And my main idea was to, since it had like one material, so I just used the first texture set and instantiated all my layers and effects, like how you see like most of the smart materials here are all like on instance, because I'm just like driving everything, all my masks and my base colors from just to one texture set onto the others.
Cool. Thank you, man.
All right. Yeah. So moving on to the same idea, like how we created this flattened burnt metal or a burnt marble texture. Same explanation applies to this, where we created this concrete, which was like very versatile again, and like added a lot of detail on the fly just by setting it in one fill there. And yeah, moving on to this sharpen filter, which is something that you can just like drop on top of your layer stack, and just putting it on instance would make it work for all the layers that are affected by it. So this way I can just like batch sharpen all my texture sets at once, like how you see it here. And the same ways goes for every other filter in your in Substance. For example, if I take use saturation, and if I want to like do some color correction from here onwards, I would just take this, put it on instance for all, and I would just, then I can just do some fixes with my color here. Yeah, this again, it's the same one as this one where I did a little light fix using the concrete shader. And then this was the major one that was really easy to do, since it was lock-off shot. I just showed it to my supervisor. He wanted like a big dramatic drip on the surface of the wall, and so I just like brought in this alpha, and I just kind of asked him to like where he wanted. It was really easy based on what he told me, and that was just like done right away, saving a lot of time for review. So this is like nothing special in this. It's just a shader with pre-made materials, and in my mask I have my fill, which is the decal leaks, and this is acting as a mask, and it's put on planar projection that I dropped using this button over there. And then I just lined it up and just like asked my supervisor, whoever was reviewing it, to like where he wanted, and that was the position that we settled with. And the same concept over there, as we see, just wanted like that top part to be like more dirty and dark, something just to show some origin of that moisture and dirt coming. And these were like some of the small dirts there. And in the end, I just like finished all this up by adding some wines to it, which was like a major requirement for this. And it was, and they looked something like this. Also to note that every shader here, so have the user enabled here. So with that said, you can have like these ISOs that you can export using your export preset that we have for Spin. And these are the ISO channels that are set up with the user 0, user 1, user 2, and it exports everything with your standard channels right with it. This is another ISO, that's the moss in the crevices that would get exported to, and this is like the big dirt that could have been taken in to look afterwards and would have added more sharpen or more resolution to it if need be. And also for the wines, it was really easy to like hand this over to the Houdini artist to like take this as a guide and build his own like wines geo from. So it was really helpful that way also. And yeah, and that's basically how I created this look. And it was quick and was done in a day. Yeah.
Wow. So just a
going back.
day's worth of work. Was that what you said? Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's brag.
Yeah. That's
Right.
cool.
And going back to the slides.
All right, back to me.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that kind of shows like a lot of what I was talking about with how important it is to have these things like layered up. And the thing is with substances, we found it's very, very easy to like stay organized. There's a lot of good folder structures. Everything's kind of just as you see it. Like it's you know, for me, like when I was learning it, it was very simple because I do Photoshop kind of. So it's a similar kind of build, right? Everything's kind of layered on top of each other, same sort of UI in a way. And I do want to say, to build on kind of what Gautam was talking about, it's like if you're kind of new to how to do all this, a big thing with VFX and games and everything, I suppose, is to use a lot of masks, and that is kind of how everything is driven. To actually just paint color on color on color is a super destructive way of working, and it makes it super hard to be able to change something down the pipeline. So for us, it's so important that we have these ISO layers. That, for like example, when he was building that big drip, to have that as a mask layer and not just painted flat on it, right? Because then you can't change that. Like, what if you needed to change the color of it? You know, it's really important to have these things being able to change on the fly, especially since Gautam had to build that in a day. You know, let's say they all of a sudden wanted it to be yellow, I don't know, for some reason, right? And he had to go back and change it. It would be impossible, right? So it's you know, it's so important to have a software that's able to be super versatile and be able to change things on the fly. So that's what we really appreciate about this software. And then going to this slide here, just take a look. This is, on the left is the viewport in Substance. And then on the right is our actual rendered out of Katana RenderMan image. and they are so darn close. That's what I love too, is that you can like, you know what you're gonna get. Having that live material in the viewport in Substance is just so useful. It is so quick, and you really, you know what you're gonna get, basically. We can go to the next slide now. Yeah, so then here is just some of the other really large assets that we tackled. They all were using the exact same kind of process that you saw, sort of what Gautam was doing, except on the full scale here. It's all the same kind of layers, made sure they're shared so everyone has the same kind of dirt, grime, vines, all of that. And it creates definitely the same, they're all in the same world. You know, this is, just by looking at it, it's this post-apocalyptic scene. That visual language really got carried through. And most of it is still just all of like the smart masks and, you know, all of the procedural grunges. I know for me personally, I rarely have to use a procedural grunge that isn't a Substance grunge, because they have one for everything you could possibly need. They have like moisture stains, you know, they have the sharp AO, soft AO, like literally everything. Like if you just take a look and just, you know, check them all out, there's something for everything you could possibly ever need it for, which is great. And then on top of that, like I kind of said, you know, you just go in and hand paint, erase some stuff out, and, you know, give each building its own little character, and then you get your final product. So we can go to the next thing. I think we're almost done. Yeah, just to like kind of, as we, you know, a little bit of a housekeeping slide. I know that we were using a little bit of an older version of Substance when we did Zombieland, but I mean, these still apply, and I'm sure that people can find use for these kind of tips. So for VFX, you know, we have these really high res objects. You're getting UDIMs that can be up to the hundreds, sometimes super heavy, and obviously people have hardware limitations. Things that we like to do just to kind of like, you know, tips and tricks is obviously in Substance, you know, if you're not super familiar with the software, you know, you can hide UDIMs, you can change the resolution of the ones you're viewing or not viewing. So basically just, you know, the high res ones are the ones that you're actually working on. You know, and then also when you're baking out your auxiliary maps, maybe you don't need all of them, or maybe you don't need them all at 4K. You can, you know, put them at, you know, 1 or 2, whatever, you know, whatever your specific shot or asset needs. Like you can kind of customize the way you're working to fit that. Another trick that we use sometimes, it's a little bit one of those destructive ones, so we don't recommend it first off, but what you can do is do like that first base pass, right? Like you get your stone and like base dirt, you know, the first kind of step done, and you actually can export that out and then bring it back in as just your base, like in a base fill layer, just as a flat texture into a new project. So what that would do is just basically, it's just like a layer of paint on everything without all the layers that make it heavy, right? And then you can build on top of that with all of your like super dirt grunge, the vines, like for example in this show, would be something like that. I mean, yeah, it is kind of destructive. Let's say you do have to change that base layer, you do have to go like revert back to the other project, but you know, for what it is, it would like cut your project in half. So that's a little tip. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Zombieland Double Tap. We can actually watch the show reel for that too now.
God is my witness, I will not miss. My aim will be true. You've got a death wish, or at least a kiss, when my sights are set on you.
Yeah, so that was the reel, and this last slide is just some shot renders from the movie, and that's wrapping it up. That's wrapping up our presentation.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you guys. That was incredible. Really cool workflow stuff, especially Zombieland, man. I love those movies. Double Tap was awesome, man. It's like you said, Eryn, it was super funny. Yeah, really weird story about that. My wife and I were talking about it, and my youngest son, he's like 11. He was overhearing us talk. Obviously, he would never watch the movie, but I'm just saying he overheard us talking about Tallahassee and the Twinkies, you know. And so he was like asking me like, "What's a Twinkie?" And then I had to like go and show him like, "Well, you know, it's this crazy like snack food." I don't know. It was just funny how, you know, as a kid growing up,
Wait,
you
they
remember
don't
Twinkies.
know?
Yeah, they didn't know what a Twinkie was, so he was always like, "What's a Twinkie?" So it was kind of weird. But anyways, thanks guys. That was incredible. It's really cool to see those VFX surreal breakdowns like that. It's really cool. So I think next what we'll do is jump into some Q&A. We did have just a few questions from the chat. And so yeah, we'll just jump into some of those. Let me check this this Dropbox paper we have and see what kind of questions. So the first one here is asking about what program did you use for compiling and labeling references?
Oh, I can take that. We actually use PureRef, it's called, to compile everything. As for labeling it, sometimes we just open up a Photoshop document and stick that in.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next question is why ISO maps over something, say, Cridomat? Sorry, I'm probably saying
Like
that
a
wrong.
Cryptomat?
Cryptomat. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, I guess it's Cryptomat. Yes.
Yeah, I guess it's like how a Cryptomat is based. It's more on the object side of things, where you can create different colors. Like that's on more on the rendering end, where you would render something. It would have like different color values to it that you can mask off of from. But ISOs is just like another added thing, and with a little description that how it can be used for the purpose of it, like how it was showing on the wall, that big drip surface. Now, if in case it didn't really work well with the shot that I had, it could have just been sharpened up afterwards in Katana. So it's just a preference, something that we provide the look artist with these ISOs. It's just a preference. And also we do have Cryptomat afterwards also, while we render as a separate pass for like further tweaking by the comp artists.
Okay, cool. So the next question is, are normal maps being used or displacement maps? And they make a reference to Zombieland here.
Okay, yeah, sometimes it depends on what we're doing. Depends. Typically, we will have a displacement map. We'll have a sculpt from one of the modeling artists. They'll have sculpted in some, you know, some destruction or something like that, or some surface detail. We use bump maps and height maps a little bit more than we use normal maps. But normal maps sometimes do come into play. They are a little bit easier to use when you're working with effects. Like if something, you know, you don't really want a whole bunch of displacement on something that gets, you know, blown up. It can kind of, it'll cause interpenetrations or something like that sometimes. So normal maps are really good for something like that. But typically, yeah, typically we use bump maps and displacement.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eryn. And then another question here was asking a little bit more about kind of the UV layout and stuff. I think, Gautam, you're already sharing your screen. Sorry, I meant to ask you guys to go to the video view, but that's okay. This one was asking about, they just want to see the UVs for the piece. I think you covered a little bit, but I was wondering if you could just kind of jump back in and just talk a little bit about more on that. There were some users from the chat who were just still a little confused on, you know, the the UDIM workflow and things like that.
Oh, for the Expanse or for this wall? If
I think for that wall, actually. Yeah, what you showcased in Painter, the wall.
Yeah, sure. So if I go back in Painter, basically nothing was like too special. It's just if I can just go and isolate this one. So this is acting as one UV, like a UV tile, and basically, and the same one goes same way the other was laid out. So basically, and it was like 24 of those. And yeah, there's nothing like special, just like 24 UV tiles with just unwrapped properly and just like laid out using some nice spacings. Yep.
Okay,
Does it
cool.
answer?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. And then another question here while you're in Painter is like, which environment do you use in Painter? Is it custom? I think you covered that a little bit with what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
I'm not.
I think it's Tomoko. It's a Tomoko studio. So we have this and another one. It's the Uffizi. That's like our default ones that we do our look dev also afterwards. So just to like match one-on-one with how we see it in Substance and how we see it in Katana. So yeah, Tomoko is like the default one in it, and Uffizi it's something that we import in. Something, uh, yeah.
Okay, cool. And this other question was mentioning, I think that maybe you mentioned something about some sci-fi modeling tutorials, but the sound cut out, and they were wondering if you could just repeat that.
Oh, sure. So, like everyone in the team, I always encourage everybody to, like, before they start any of the sci-fi stuff, to like go and refer to Neil Blevin's tutorials. Got some amazing work, artwork on ArtStation. Also, he's got like these series of tutorials where he talks about how you can create nice looking that would look functioning also at the time, and it's just like not something very random. The best one that I like is the primary, secondary, and tertiary forms tutorial. And it just basically talks about like how you can create a big shape and you can narrow it down to the secondary shapes and moving on to the tertiary ones and not have everything evenly distributed in your design. So that'll be Neil Blevins. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, man, Neil is a legend. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I
an
know.
amazing reference. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll always
very
follow
good.
that just to get
Yeah.
inspired and yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to also see artists of your guys' caliber as well, like to hear like what inspires you, what you guys do for training and things like that. So thanks for sharing with that. Well, guys, I think that's actually it for our questions. So pretty quick. I guess Gautam, you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen, and we'll just go back
Sure.
here to our video view. So yeah, man, I think we'll just kind of get things closed out. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today on the stream. This was a really great show, and it was very cool to see these VFX workflows. So it was really awesome, and I want to especially thank Gautam and Eryn for presenting and sharing your expertise. It was really great to see this insight. Thank you very much. And I guess any closing thoughts for you guys?
Just thanks for having us. It's great to talk about a software that we love to use. So.
Yeah, second on that, just thanks for having us over and share our workflow. It's good fun.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's really cool to hear that you guys are using Substance so much and that it's actually been a cool, a very good tool for you guys. So thanks again. That's awesome. So yeah, just a little bit of housekeeping here. So for our next live stream, this one is going to be with the Painter team, and we're going to have a special guest, Damien. Damien is the artist behind the visuals for our UV tile release, and this stream is going to be on August 27th. And we will take a behind-the-scenes look at UV tiles. So more love on the UV tiles coming soon to everybody. I know we all waited like several years for this, many years. So yeah, we have quite a few streams dedicated to this. So with that said, I just want to thank everyone again. Take care, be safe, and we will see you on the next stream. And hey, happy birthday, Vincent. Thanks for joining us on the chat. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.